What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video, and it's Season 36, baby, the final season of Overwatch 1, as we lead right into the launch of Overwatch 2 just around the corner. We have to break down what are the best characters, what should you be playing right now to not only win your games, but develop your skills in an anticipation to dominate Overwatch 2. So we're gonna break all of that down so you know exactly who to grind. But the GameLeap website is the best place to truly master every single character with tips, tricks, guides that you won't find anywhere else. And we're gonna be remaking hero courses for every single character for Overwatch 2. So wait no further and go check it out right now in the description down below. Now, we all know that in Overwatch 2, we're losing a tank role and many characters are just completely changing. Specifically, characters that are getting a really big change aren't really worth grinding right now because it's going to be a completely different type of character when you're in Overwatch 2. For instance, Doomfist, regardless of where he would be on this tier list, I would not suggest you grind him considering he is fundamentally different in Overwatch 2 being transitioned to the tank role. That being said, characters like Tracer and Soldier are more or less the same. They're not fundamentally changing in a huge way in Overwatch 2. While the threats are going to be different, the routing and positioning is different. Those are things you're going to have to learn with time. These characters are very good now in the S tier for DPS, and they will still be played in a very similar way in Overwatch 2. Meaning, if you grind them and you're good at them now, you'll be good at them in Overwatch 2 all the same. This also makes this tier list a little bit strange, because if we go all the way down to what I would consider the F tier or the bad tier or the characters that are not very good in ranked play, Sombra is incredibly low, having very low win rate and pick rate across the board at nearly every single rank, and it's because Sombra in Overwatch 1 state, she requires a ton of synergy with your team, coordination, things you're just not going to find in ranked, and that's not the case for Sombra for Overwatch 2. So she might be a character worth grinding, even if you're not going to get a ton of impact going into this last season. That being said, she's so different in Overwatch 2 that outside of a lot of her mechanical parts of her kit, much of the character thought process is changing. So you can make an argument that you don't really want to grind her right now anyway. So let's break down the top 10 most broken characters that are very good in the meta right now, don't change much, and are going to be really powerful and very similar in Overwatch 2, in their Overwatch 2 counterpart. Let's break that down. Now, kicking it off with number 10, we actually have Reaper. Reaper is a character that I've always thought is underrepresented in ranked. And for the vast majority of ranks, you could absolutely bully people on Reaper with really strategic engagements. You learn proper timing, how to properly utilize a very fast time to kill, and Reaper is way better in Overwatch 2. So not only can he be used now to grind out of the majority of ranks all the way to, I would say, Masters is where he teeters off a little bit, he's gonna be even better in Overwatch 2. Speaking of insane characters that you should be grinding that are going to be incredible in Overwatch 2, we have both Lucio and Zenyatta. These characters are insanely powerful now, but there's some interesting things that you need to consider. First off, Lucio has always been very strong, dependent on the composition, and in Overwatch 2, he's still very freaking powerful, with even less of a need to enable his team and the ability to make even more plays himself because of the 5v5 environment. They haven't changed Lucio in a crazy fundamental way, so if you're a really god tier Lucio now and you grind Lucio, you can be a god tier Lucio in Overwatch 2 all the same. So if you're looking for a support to pick up and play that will see a ton of play and is very powerful right now, Lucio's number 9 on my list. Now, number 8 is Zenyatta, and Zenyatta is getting a huge buff going into Overwatch 2, but he's honestly still powerful now. I know you don't see Zenyatta at a lot of ranks, but when you get to the highest tiers of rank, Zenyatta sees a ton of play at Grandmaster level. And the reason that is, there's 3 major reasons. The first one is the fact that you have teammates that peel for you a little bit more. Not a lot, but a little bit more. The second thing is Zenyatta's positioned better. As Zenyatta, you're a glass cannon, so oftentimes you have to position very safely, and you have to really analyze the threats that are coming after you and be prepared for them and in a position where you could back away. And the third thing is the mechanical skill that enables that cannon part of glass cannon, meaning Zenyatta is incredibly freaking lethal in the right hands, and he can roll pretty much any DPS that comes after him, and even some tanks. So you can climb with this character, and learning a lot of what you need to do to live and get value out of this character now will really set you up in the future for when you got Super Kick Zen, who's even more cracked and more important going into the next game. So he's number 8 on my list as a suggestion. Moving on to tanks, we have some dominant tanks right now that also will be dominant going into Overwatch 2. And the first one we got to talk about is Diva. Diva is an incredible character that I think many in Overwatch 1 didn't truly access the potential skill ceiling on her. She is truly one of the hardest carry characters in the entire game and has been for a very long time. Diva has the unique ability to completely shut down enemy DPS, completely deny playmaking, and honestly have a crazy amount of impact over the course of a game that when you actually push it through every single engagement, every single fight, you just win so many of them because of a good Diva's impact. Then you're gonna have a crazy high win percentage. But the thing about Diva is you need everything to be good at her. You need good positioning, and positioning that has the ability to transition between aggressive and defensive on the fly, and in a position that puts you in place to impact different threats coming at your team, or, you know, try to make a play on a weakened target that your teammates get weak or whatever the case may be. You also need a high level mechanical skill to properly burst targets, fly away. Every single tiny bit of damage matters in a lot of those situations, and you'll see the best divas on the planet in pro play have insane mechanical skill. And then third off, you just need overall game sense. You need to be able to adequately know every single threat, put yourself in the mind of what an enemy tracer will do and an enemy far will do at the same time. Think about the hog hook, think about the stuns, think about everything, all while trying to make defensive and aggressive plays. There's a lot to juggle on this character. That being said, your role on Diva is going to become even more predominant when it switches to solo tank. While in many ways Diva is going to change, in a lot of ways, the good divas are going to thrive in the same way. And Diva's a very great character to grind now, and will still be a great character in Overwatch 1. But the next tank that we got to talk about is undoubtedly Sigma. Now, Sigma is definitely getting changed in some major ways. However, the core of Sigma is still the same. You have the same rock, the same grasp, the same ultimate, and a lot of the decision making are going to be similar, especially if you played Sigma back before he got nerfed quite a bit. The biggest thing that many Sigmas didn't learn properly is how to utilize natural cover and the abilities that you have on Sigma to take space and output pressure. You got to realize that Sigma's not a character like some of these other tanks that can just push his body into the enemy and just tank blows. He can't do that. He has to do it with pressure. He has to maintain the optimal range from the enemy, slowly start building up his ultimate, pressuring out the enemy's shields or pressuring out the enemy's health, well, he ekes his way through and pushes his way up and slowly gains ground. Now, on top of that, you can make plays, you can peel on Sigma. There's a ton of things you could do in a similar way to Diva. And Sigma is a character that definitely has a very high skill ceiling, but he's also really powerful now. He's probably going to be very powerful in Overwatch 2, or will be at some point, and is definitely worth grinding. Speaking of grinding, it's time to move over back to some DPS, and I got 2 divers for you that you should definitely be practicing if you're not practicing them: Genji and Tracer. These characters are going to be very, very strong in Overwatch 2, and they're already some of the best characters to climb with in Overwatch 1. Specifically Genji if we're talking about underneath Masters, and Tracer basically at every rank. These characters can have a crazy amount of solo impact. Talking specifically about Tracer, this character requires you to time your engagements incredibly efficiently, and you have to utilize routing and trying to navigate the map so that you have the maximum amount of abilities before you get to your target, right? You want to have as many blinks as possible before you actually engage, like a support, for instance, rather than blinking across the map trying to fight, having to recall, and then just running away. If you have your blinks to play around and fight with the enemy in the back line, that's gonna make it easier for you to confirm that kill. But also, the better and better opponents get, the less and less time you have, which means the better and better your mechanical skill has to be, the faster and faster your engagements have to be. This is something that scales really fast, and players react very, very quickly. And because if you're a god tier Tracer, right, and you go and play in a lower rank, you can dominate because you're used to players reacting, you know, double as fast, triple as fast, whatever the case may be. But if you want to keep continuing to climb as Tracer, there's a lot of things that is necessary for you to succeed. And I think that, you know, properly learning how to blinks, do all your blinks, 180 blinks, 90-degree blinks, properly knowing how to consistently stick pulse bombs practicing those in the training room. That's something that is just gonna separate yourself from a lot of other tracers. She's a character that has all the capability to completely carry fights, and it's gonna still be that way in Overwatch 2, so grind it while you can. Now, talking about Genji in particular, the same thing applies to Genji, right? The reaction thing and the time to kill thing and the proper engagements. But as someone who grinded Genji myself all the way to top 500, played Genji a lot, had times where I played Genji, you know, in gold and couldn't do anything, had times where I even played Genji in silver. I played Genji on freaking console. I played Genji everywhere. I loved Genji. And there's a lot that it takes to be good at this character, and there's a lot that you need to think about when playing this character. Of course, you could get a lot of impact as your, you know, mechanical skill goes up, your time to kill goes up when you can go in and consistently hit a certain amount of shurikens in a melee and get out safely. That is, of course, the great thing about Genji, because he's a momentum-based character. But the harder things about Genji is, you know, properly balancing how passive you are, how much you prioritize building your ultimate, how much you prioritize going in and applying pressure with your team versus playing very safe and strategic, flanking versus playing on the front line. There's a lot about Genji that you could do depending on your composition and depending on who you're up against. Genji was always a really hard character as we, you know, work towards the later stages in Overwatch 1, because one of the things you could always do in the beginning with Genji is if there were not really great opportunities for you to go in and find a play, you could just poke and put pressure out and build up your blade, right? You didn't have to force an engagement. You could build up that blade, and if you saw an opportunity, great, you could go for it, but you didn't have to force it through, and then when you got blade, you could make a play with it. The problem came that blade just became less and less and less and less powerful, less and less and less guaranteed. So you could, you know, never find an opportunity playing against a Brig, for instance, build up blade, go blade, and get very little value with it, if any at all, and you did basically nothing besides throw some shurikens out and do a blade that did nothing. You know, that's kind of what happened with Genji over time. That being said, Genji had so much solo carry impact, and a lot of players weren't disciplined enough at the majority of ranks to shut him down, that Genji's still a dominant force through the majority of ranks. Until you get to the ranks where players are properly counterpicking him and always looking to peel him and shut him down, Genji can still get a ton of value because he gives so much agency to you mechanically. That being said, in Overwatch 2, things are going to change where Genji is coming back in a huge way, becoming one of the best characters in the game is what it looks like right now, because of the lack of CC and the increase of just offensive burst. Genji is just insane, and I do think that he's really worth grinding right now. If you have ever wanted to be a Genji main, but you've known for the longest time that hasn't been good, now's the time to grind him, because he's actually going to be good in Overwatch 2. Thank Aaron Keller. Yeah. Now, as we approach the end, I want to take note of honorable mentions, or characters that are really strong, but they're going to be very different going into Overwatch 2, so I didn't quite want to actually put them on this list in the same way. So a character like Cassidy, for instance, he could be very strong in Overwatch 2. That remains to be seen. But the fact of the matter is, many players play around his stun in a really big way. And while mechanically it's similar, like the aim is similar, it's the same, right? The fact that he doesn't have the stun completely changes the positioning, the play patterns, everything on the character. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to grind out that character right now when he's not going to be the same character in Overwatch 2. Another example of that is Ryan. And I think Ryan is less true to an extent, where you could still get a lot of the same positioning fundamentals on Ryan. But there's a lot of things that you could really do on Ryan, plays you can make on Ryan, and just a lot more freedom on the new Ryan compared to this Ryan, where even though Ryan is a great character now, sure to grind with, I don't necessarily think grinding him now prepares you for Overwatch 2. But there are 3 characters that you should definitely be grinding right now if you want a high chance to climb now in Season 36, and you will be better set up for Overwatch 2. And the first character we have on this list is Zarya. Now, we know Zarya is going to change in a pretty big way. Of course, she can bubble someone else, and 2 bubbles is a big deal, but the core fundamental of Zarya is the same. Pushing in properly about your bubble use, utilizing your abilities to properly engage, having good tracking to burst down targets. There's a lot about Zarya that is just the same. And if you're a god tier Zarya player, you're gonna slot right into new Zarya just perfectly. And Zarya is just a really, really great character to climb. She has silently been like one of the best solo carry characters in freaking Overwatch 1 that didn't get enough traction. I mean, this character was insane. She could completely dictate fights And ask any tank smurf and just say, hey, if you're climbing, what do you climb with? They just climb with Zarya. They just get 100 energy and kill everyone. That's just how it is. Zarya can just completely dominate fights. She's very, very strong. She's priced to be even stronger individually going into Overwatch 2, and I definitely think she's worth grinding a lot right now. Number 2 on the list, top of the meta, and is going to probably be top of the meta in Overwatch 2 as well, Soldier 76. Very freaking strong character, and with all the changes that Overwatch 2 is getting, Soldier is priced to be even better, even though right now he's already pretty damn good. Soldier is interesting because he's a very independent character. He wants to find these situations where he could take one-off engagements, start him off with a helix, burst down a target, and then either get away or, you know, keep pursuing this pressure from an off angle. He's very hard to chase down. He's very hard to kill and pick off. Soldier is a character that definitely is more about your decision-making ability and how you time your engagements rather than just your mechanical skill. Mechanically, he's easier to play than a lot of other, you know, DPS characters, in my personal opinion. Characters like Genji, characters like Tracer, Widowmaker require more mechanically from you, but Soldier requires you to properly gauge, you know, decision-making between aggressive and defensive, and I do think he's a character that is really, really great to grind right now, just to get very comfortable on the character and do a little bit of limit testing and see what you can get away with. The last character, SSS tier, number 1 on the list. You can't tell me you didn't see this one coming. It's Ana. Ana is great, and she's great in Overwatch 1 as like the best character in the game right now, the most picked, and just very dominant in the majority of ranks. And it's not gonna change in Overwatch 2. Ana's great, and she's not really changing as a character going into Overwatch 2 either. She's more or less the same with more self-agency because she can just heal herself if she doesn't take damage after a certain amount of time, which means more aggressive nades and less needing to nade yourself. Which is interesting because that was always the mark of a truly good Ana, especially a ranked Ana that was trying to have a ton of impact, was Anas that would not really value their life as much as they would their potential aggressive impact. You know, Anas would not heal 40 damage, 50 damage, 60 damage off themselves with a nade. They would try to make a play. At least good Anas would. But for Ana, it's another character that requires a ton from you. Mechanically, positionally, your decision-making has to be on point. Learning how to hit consistent sleep darts, learning how to hit aggressive nades off the back wall. There's so much on this character where you can have a crazy impact with her. I would highly suggest, you know, playing her, practicing her, do a little bit of limit testing here and there, trying to practice being aggressive on this character sometimes, but be aggressive in a way that doesn't get you punished. See what you can get away with and where you can get away with it. Don't just mindlessly be aggressive and int and feed, and really go into those tryhard free-for-all lobbies, practice playing Ana and sleeping DPS targets, divers, tracers, Genjis. Realize that because there's less CC in the game, supports are going to be targeted hard, and you need to hit your sleeps, you need to hit your shots. But this is my top 10 list of characters that you should dominate with right now, Season 36, and you could dominate with in Overwatch 2, so get to grinding. But the GameLeap website's the best place to master any of these characters. Tips, tricks, and guides, breakdowns over all of them, including VOD review breakdowns that will give you everything you need to absolutely dominate. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now, and stay tuned for the Overwatch 2 freaking design. Everything gonna be redone, so get in early right now down below.